The Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show is sponsored by Accunet Mortgage, an equal housing lender, NMLS ID 255368, and Accunet Realty Advisors, which is a separate company from but still affiliated with Accunet Mortgage.
Putting a roof over your head without the headache. Get answers to all of your home buying questions. This is the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show with Brian Wickert on 620 WTMJ.
Good morning to you. Welcome to the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show. I'm Eric Bilstead, along with Accunet Mortgage and Accunet Realty Advisors owner Brian Wickert and his son, of course, the millennial licensed loan consultant, David Wickert. If you have a question or comment, you can give us a call, 414-799-1620, or throughout the Midwest on the Accunet Mortgage toll-free talk line, 1-800-877-1620. Brian and David are with us now. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning. Great to have you back for a second week in a row, Eric.
Good to be here. Good to be here. I couldn't get enough last week.
Well, there you go. All right. Well, for the past several weeks, we've been trying to help people understand just how large a number $1 trillion is because, we have $10 trillion of mortgages outstanding.
Yep.
The national debt is $19.5 trillion. The American economy is about $17 trillion, the same as the Eurozone. Just how much is $1 trillion anyway?
Yes.
And let's see, we've measured it so far in terms of time, which is 1 trillion seconds ago is back in the Stone Age.
That's 30,000 years.
Then last week was distance. Do you remember how many round trips, Eric, it was to the moon and back for 1 trillion miles?
More than 20, right?
Yeah, it was 31 round trips to the moon. Is $1 trillion. All right, today, imagine a gallon of water. You're walking around with a gallon of water. Well, 1 million gallons of water is about 1/4 of Lambeau Field, the playing surface, to a depth of 10 feet. So you can get your mind around that.
That's how much beer they drink on any Sunday.
Probably right there. Yeah, it's beer. There you go. All right, I couldn't find a billion gallon equivalent, but 1 trillion gallons. All right, do you think that's the equivalent of Pewaukee Lake, Lake Winnebago, or Lake Michigan? Dave, do you know the answer?
No, I'm going to go with Pewaukee Lake.
Eric?
I'm going big. I'm going Lake Michigan.
Lake Winnebago is only 696 billion, so it's not even 1 trillion gallons. And I hear it's a fairly shallow lake. I think the average depth of Lake Winnebago is like 15 feet or something.
Oh, it's big.
Couldn't find the Pewaukee.
Okay.
But just when we thought 1 trillion was a lot,
yes,
the number of gallons in Lake Michigan is 6 quadrillion.
That's 15 zeros.
Yeah. A quadrillion is 1,000 trillion, or 1 million billion.
Okay.
All right, anyway, so that's just 1 trillion, folks, is a lot of money. We throw it around like it's got pretty close to 1 billion. It's not.
Yeah.
It's a lot of billions. All right, we also started to talk last week but got interrupted about our topic of refinance by divorce. Unfortunately, a lot of people in our country get divorced, and that forces typically, if they happen to own a home, one of the parties, in many, many cases, ends up wanting to keep the former marital property, but they need to, by court order, get the other departing ex-spouse off the mortgage loan. And there's only one way to do that, and that is to refinance. Okay. David, do you happen to have handy? Because I know you do.
I do.
Number of people that get divorced in America per year.
800,000, give or take.
Oh,
but don't worry,
about
2.1 million per year are getting married. So we have a net positive.
Oh, yeah, more people are getting married than are getting divorced.
Right.
Okay, so that's good. And in Wisconsin, did you come up with a number for me?
I came up, it was about 2.7 out of every 1,000 people. So there's about 6 million people who live in the state of Wisconsin.
I don't think it's that big.
All right, I'll come back to you.
We'll come back to you. He'll get back to us on that. Okay, so again, to recap, this happens quite frequently, and you have 3 periods of time, Eric, when you could divorce. One is before the divorce starts. Let's call that the preemptive strike.
Okay.
Hey, you know that the marriage is kind of rocky and you're probably headed to divorce court. Well, you can refinance before you file, because a mortgage lender can only ask you, Eric, what is your marital status? Are you married, separated, or divorced?
So in this case, you would just say separated,
No,
or
let me back up. I made a big mistake. The 3 categories are married, separated, or unmarried.
Yes.
If you have filed for divorce, then you have to say separated. And, people are honest, so they'll usually say, well, I just filed for divorce.
Yep.
Okay, well, that puts you in the separated category. Mm-hmm. And when you're in that separated category, until you reach the point during your divorce that you have a written agreement between the spouses that says, here's how much one party is going to pay the other in separate maintenance and child support if there are children. Until you get that written agreement, you're poison. No lender wants to help you because we can't figure out what your monthly debts are going to be, and that is a huge part in underwriting and approving loans. So if you take care of the refinance before you file, that's fine, because you would report correctly that you're still married, you're not separated because you haven't filed, and you're not unmarried yet. And so that works because we can remove one of the spouses from the mortgage. Now, after you get divorced, if you happen to do the refinance before you file, once you're done with the divorce, you will still have to, at that point, remove the departing spouse from title using a quitclaim deed. Okay? So then the during divorce, you're poison until such time as you have the marital property settlement agreement. And then, of course, there's after divorce, because now we have a legal document that spells everything out. When we come back, we're going to talk about some of the particular pitfalls and problems, though, that do occur in the after divorce stage when we come back.
You are listening to the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show on 620 WTMJ. If you have a question or comment, or maybe you're getting divorced, you can call 414-799-1620 or throughout the Midwest on the Accunet Mortgage toll-free line at 1-800-877-1620 and have a question for Brian and or David. It's 10:15.
Home buying advice from the guys who know it best. This is the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show with Brian Wickert on 620 WTMJ.
The Republicans have wrapped up in Cleveland. Now it's the Democrats' turn in the spotlight. The Democratic National Convention kicks off in Philadelphia tomorrow. Get a preview of night one on Wisconsin's Afternoon News. That is at 3:21 tomorrow. You are listening to the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show on 620 WTMJ. I'm Eric Bilstead along with Brian Wickert and David Wickert.
So we're talking about divorce, and to defend myself in the research department, we had noted that there's about 5.76 million people who live in the state of Wisconsin. 2.7 out of every 1,000 in Wisconsin get divorced. So the quick math is about 15,000 people in Wisconsin get divorced every year, and that was corroborated just now by our other half of the research department, according to the Wisconsin Health and Human Services Department.
Yeah, that's the, by the way, on a national level, who keeps track of divorce?
The Center of Disease Control.
Yeah, Center for Disease Control. And in Wisconsin, it's the Department of Health Services. So when we're talking about, okay, so now let's say you're in the after divorce department.
Yep.
And somebody has to pay alimony or separate maintenance and or child support. Okay. That becomes a monthly debt.
Like a car payment.
Like a car payment. And so I have a case going on right now where there's a conflict between the actual divorce decree and what the guy is actually paying. So he's over the maximum debt-to-income ratio. It's kind of a confluence of a perfect storm. His employer is large and will not verify the guy's overtime income, so I can't use his overtime income. Then his divorce decree says one number, let's say it's $1,800, but he's really only paying $1,500. However, at the $1,800 monthly maintenance and child support, he doesn't qualify for this purchases of what actually he's trying to do. So I think we're going to get that straightened out by digging down and getting the right number for the maintenance. But the point is, it counts as a car payment. I had a case earlier this year where I was consulting with the person before divorce, and we were kind of estimating if he did in fact go through with the divorce, which he hadn't filed yet, his debt-to-income ratio would be such that he definitely would not qualify based on the amount of maintenance that he would have to pay. So we did one of those preemptive cases, and in this case, he was actually going to buy another property. It's complicated. But the point is, we got the financing done before he filed, and everything turned out fine. Okay. Now, the other thing, though, that's true is let's say that you're on the receiving end of alimony or child support, and let's say that you want to use that income to stay in the former marital home. The most common instance is the wife and kids stay in the family home, the husband leaves the household, Now the ex-wife is going to be receiving maintenance and child support.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, okay, now I'm going to refinance and get my ex-husband off the loan. But what's the problem, Dave?
Well, there has to be a track record of receiving those payments.
How long?
6 months.
That's right.
Yeah.
So you can't just do that the month after divorce if there has not been
a track record.
So, but in a lot of cases, and this is just a heads up, hey, start making that monthly payment.
Well, the other thing on child support is there has to be a continuation.
Correct.
It can't just be like, I'm going to get child support for the next 3 months before our kid turns 18. I had a case that on a loan for a purchase that closed this month where the borrower had a 15-year-old. And so that kid was going to turn 18 within the 3-year window, so we couldn't use that child support payment
for
to
that
help
particular child.
Yeah.
So it's complicated, but you need an expert staff like Accunet. Unfortunately or fortunately, we have a lot of experience dealing with divorces. So if you're in the process of divorce or know somebody who is, give us a call. We know what we're doing at Accunet Mortgage. By the way, your mother hates it when I call you Dave on the radio, so remind me I'm supposed to call you David.
Noted.
Okay. I'll try
Just for you, Mom.
Yep. When we come back, I think we've got a caller on the line that has a question about capital gains, and we're also going to talk about just how low rates are.
If you'd like to jump on, you can, 414-799-1620, or on the Accunet Mortgage toll-free talk line, 800-877-1620. You're listening to the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show on 620 WTMJ.
Helping you get your dream home for your dream budget on the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show with Brian Wickert on 620 WTMJ.
The Brewers wrap up a 3-game series with division rivals, the Chicago Cubs, today. Junior Guerra takes the mound for the Crew, goes up against Cubs' John Lester. The winner takes the series. Our Brewers game day coverage begins at 12:35. First pitch just after 1. You're listening to the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show. I'm Eric Bilstead, along with hosts Brian Wickert and David Wickert. Brian, we do have someone on the line if you'd like to take a call here. It's Tim in Milwaukee. Tim, hello. You're on 620 WTMJ.
Good morning, guys. A little off topic. I'm happily married and not planning on a divorce.
Excellent.
But we are planning on doing a 1031 tax exchange, buying a property locally here. We've heard some conflicting reports on buying a property. Does it have to be at or above the level that you sold at, or can it actually be below and then pay the difference, or get taxed on the difference? I guess capital gains if it's below the value of the sell price.
Sure. Here's what we're going to do on that topic. So what Tim is talking about is a rental property, correct? Because you can't do a 1031 exchange on a residence. And the general idea here is that you can delay your capital gains bill. And what we're talking about is, let's just pretend that you bought this property that you're going to sell. You bought it for $200,000. Now you're going to sell it for $300,000. Well, if you do that and it's a rental property, it's just like selling a stock. You got to pay capital gains on it if you've owned it for more than a year. And so what the tax law allows for is you can, as long as you don't touch the money. Okay, so it's very important. You have to work with a title company to take the proceeds from that sale, and then you put it in the trust account of a title company. It sits there.
It literally can't go into your savings
If you touch it, you're
poisoned.
You're paying tax.
Okay.
And then you have to buy a like kind property. Okay. I'm going to say, and we're going to get the answer on this from my first cousin, Paul Wickert, owner of Accunet, Accurate Tax and Financial Services.
Yes.
I'll get you, if you leave your number with our producer, I'll get you cousin Paul's contact information because he could answer this in a lightning second. But I'm going to say that if you go down in value, you're going to have to pay capital gains on something.
Whatever's left
That's
over.
That's my amateur answer. But thanks for calling into the show, Tim. Leave your number with Tom, and we'll get you hooked up with cousin Paul.
Thanks very much.
You're welcome. The other thing, just as long as we're talking about capital gains, that I did look up because I thought this was going to be the question, right on the IRS website, if you've owned your primary residence for at least 2 years and you've lived in the home as your main home for at least 2 years, then you can defer up to $250,000 of capital gain.
I don't think it's not defer.
I'm sorry, exclude.
Yeah.
Thank you, David.
I'm here for you.
You can exclude $250,000 of that gain as a single taxpayer or $500,000 on a joint return.
So if you miraculously turn a $200,000 house into a $450,000
which
house,
you could do if you owned it long enough.
Sure.
I mean, think about your grandparents
Yeah.
or somebody that's owned the house for a really long time in a good real estate market.
Right.
It could happen.
Okay.
Then you don't have to pay any capital gains whatsoever. All right, what we got going on next here, as we're coming up on the bottom of the hour news, is, you always hear me talk about in my radio ads, or anybody who listens to WTMJ sure would, I always say, if you have 25% equity and all the other right stuff.
Yeah, what's all that right stuff?
Well, we're going to cover that when we come back, because I've had a couple of instances.
There's more than one thing.
There are 7 things. When somebody calls up and says, hey, Dave, Ed, what is your rate on the 30-year fixed rate today? There are only 7 variables that could impact the answer.
That's it?
Yeah, and one of them has come up for me a couple of times this week. That was a surprise. It spoils the refi party for a lot of people. And they're like, well, it didn't matter last time. Well, it matters now. We'll give you the answer. What is that party spoiling feature of a person's mortgage situation when we come back from the news?
And there's still room for you, too. If you'd like to weigh in, you can do so. If you have a question or comment, 414-799-1620, or throughout the Midwest on the Accunet Mortgage toll-free line at 1-800-877-1620. You're listening to the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show on 620 WTMJ. It is 10:30 with an update from WTMJ's 24-hour newsroom. Here's Colleen Boland.
Thank you, Eric. Hillary Clinton's campaign manager accuses Russia of leaking emails from the Democratic National Committee to help Donald Trump in the presidential race. Robbie Mook says on CNN's State of the Union that experts are telling the campaign that Russian state actors broke into the DNC's emails, and that other experts say the Russians are now selectively releasing those emails. WikiLeaks has posted emails that include denunciation of Clinton's primary rival, Bernie Sanders, and his supporters. Meantime, Donald Trump Jr. is blasting Mook for the allegation. Trump Jr. speaking on CNN.
He won't say, well, I say this. We hear experts. His house cat at home once said that this is what's happening with the Russians. It's disgusting. It's so phony.
And now word that DNC Chair Demi Wasserman-Schultz will not speak at the convention or preside over it this week. Representative Marcia Fudge has been named chairwoman of the convention. Thousands of California homes have been evacuated as 2 massive wildfires rage on, one just north of Los Angeles, another 300 miles north near Big Sur. The body of a man has been found inside of a burned-out car outside of a home. WTMJ, PellaWI.com, Time Saver Traffic. Travel times look good this morning. 94 inbound, Highway 16 to the Zoo is a 10-minute trip. The Zoo to the Marquette is 6 minutes. 4145 southbound, Highway Q to the Zoo is 14 minutes. 43 inbound, Brown Deer Road to the Marquette is 10. 94 inbound, Layton Avenue to the Marquette will take you 6 minutes. And 894 northbound, the Hale to the Zoo, that's also 6 minutes. And the WTMJ 5-day forecast, a heat advisory in effect until 7 o'clock tonight. It'll be hot and humid today, a chance of thunderstorms, a high of 92. Tonight, partly cloudy, muggy, a low near 70. Monday, mostly sunny, less humid, a high of 86. Tuesday, mostly sunny and warm, a high near 86. Wednesday, partly cloudy, a chance of thunderstorms, a high of 84. Thursday, mostly cloudy, a chance of showers and storms, and a high near 80. Right now in Beaver Dam at 78 degrees, in Port Washington 72, in Milwaukee at 77 degrees. See the Storm Team 4 7-day forecast tonight at 10 on today's TMJ4. I'm Colleen Boland, News Radio 620 WTMJ.
Important home buying questions and answers you can count on. This is the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show with Brian Wickert on 620 WTMJ.
Welcome back on a hot and muggy Sunday, 10:35, 77 degrees in Milwaukee. This is the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show. If you have a question for Brian or David, you can do so, 414-799-1620. Or throughout the Midwest, you can call the Accunet Mortgage toll-free talk line at 1-800-877-1620.
Let's give people an idea just how fantastically low rates are right now. And so Freddie Mac, comes out every week and they publish their primary mortgage market survey, And this week on Thursday, which actually reflects market conditions from Tuesday, because it takes them a while to compile it, they said, hey, we're at 3.45% on a 30-year fixed rate if the borrower is willing to pay a half a point on top of ordinary closing costs.
Well, that's $1,000 on a $200,000 loan.
Thank you, David. That's exactly right. Plus, I'm going to say that the typical lender in Wisconsin's closing costs are probably about $1,800 because they charge fees that we do not.
Yeah.
Okay, Accunet's typical closing costs. We don't have any fees that go to Accunet. Any fee that we charge goes to a third party like the title company, appraisal, credit reporting company. There are no underwriting, processing, blah, 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 junk fees.
Super Bowl fee.
Yeah. Super Bowl fee, all right, for the Rocket guys. Okay, so here's where we are. If you have 25% equity and all the other right stuff, we finish the week at, on a $200,000 loan, 3.375 if you were willing to pay Accunet $1,885 a cost. So that means $1,160 in hard costs plus 3/8 of a point to drive the rate down to 3.375. The annual percentage rate, David, is 3.42% on that. If you wanted to pay no points, which is kind of a favorite Wisconsin thing to do, no points, the rate is 3.5. Your actual total net closing cost would be $885, making the annual percentage rate a mere 3.51. If you wanted no loan costs whatsoever, the APR and note rate would be 3.625. That is smoking hot.
That's pretty awesome.
2.875 would be the rate on 15-year fixed and net total closing costs of $860. All right. So when I say all the right stuff, here's what I mean. 25% equity. No second mortgage or home equity line of credit, even if the line of credit has zero balance. Owner-occupied, not a rental property. You're not taking any cash out. You're either buying the house or just refinancing your first mortgage balance. It also means that you're willing to escrow for taxes, and it means you are either a single-family home or a condo with 25% down, and that your qualifying credit scores are 740 or higher. Those are the 7 things that go into that answer to the question, so what are your rates today, Brian?
Yep.
All right. Now, David has an example of if you have how much equity, David?
I just did some different purchase options because we like to compare percentage down. So for someone who's buying a $250,000 house, I'm just going to go down the line. This is all with no closing costs. So you want to put 5% down and have no monthly PMI?
Did you say no monthly PMI?
No monthly PMI. 3.875. APR is the same. If you want to put 10% down, 3.75%. If you want to put 15% down, that's 3.625%. APR is the same. No monthly PMI.
No monthly PMI. How do we do that kind of magic? Well, it's just what we do every day, folks, at Accunet Mortgage. And what is the difference in payment, David, between putting 5% down and 10?
Then I had this conversation with someone who closed this month. The difference in the payment is $75 a month.
Okay, so and 5% on $250,000 in terms of down payment is
$12,500.
Oh, so a person could keep $12,500 in their pocket for I don't know stuff they want to buy for their new house,
a new couch,
landscaping, a porch, a deck,
exactly,
blah blah blah, and it would only cost them $75 a month.
Correct. And even if they just applied the difference in the payment from what they had saved by keeping that in their pocket, that could last you 12 years.
Wow. Okay. So don't be afraid to, and we've talked about this before on the show, Eric, you know, when you're writing an offer to buy a house, you should really have a rock-solid pre-approval from Accunet because it makes you the next best thing to a cash offer because we're verifying not only your credit but also your income and your down payment. You might, if you had 20% down, you probably want to write the offer using the 20% down in the financing contingency because sellers like that better. But that does not prevent you from then applying for and getting approved for a loan with 5% down.
Correct.
And David's got a story like that, or similar to that, when we come back from this next break. But I still haven't revealed what is the spoiler that makes things a lot worse. Of the seven. Any guesses there, Eric?
Oh,
what
my
are people
gosh.
complaining and saying, well, it didn't matter last time.
Don't make me guess that.
All right, I won't. I'll give you the answer. It's people who have a home equity line of credit with zero balance.
Oh.
Okay? That spoils the pricing on any refinance. And I'm going to, maybe before we get to David's story, when we come back from this break, I'm going to tell you just how much of a spoiler, hey, I got a home equity line, it doesn't have any balance. I don't want to close it. well, dude, you just ruined your refinance pricing. I'll tell you how bad it is when we come back.
And there's always room for you as well, 414-799-1620 if you'd like to weigh in. You're listening to the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show on 620 WTMJ.
Expert advice on buying a home. Here's more of the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show with Brian Wickert on 620 WTMJ.
414-799-1620 if you'd like to catch up with Brian or David. You can also call the Accunet Mortgage toll-free talk line at 1-800-877-1620. And Maureen is in Elkhorn. She has a question, Brian, about mortgage. Hi, Maureen. You're on WTMJ. Good morning.
Hello. My question is, I have a $275,000 value home. I have a first mortgage of $88,000 with 11 years left at 2.75% interest. And I have a HELOC at $48,000 balance that will be coming due in January of 18 with a 5% fixed. I'm 60 years old. I just recently lost my husband. So my income has dropped considerably. So I'm kind of at that question now, do I refinance, or I would have to go with a 30-year mortgage? And I was just wondering if that would be a smart thing to do at this point.
Yes, in general, I think it would because, A, you have plenty of equity. And so if you intend to stay in the house, the real danger that you rightly have identified, good job by you, is that looming home equity line or loan that comes due and payable. I'm really not fond at all of those home equity lines or home equity loans that have what's called a balloon feature, meaning, as you're experiencing, Maureen, hey, you got to pay it all up at once. It's really kind of a dangerous product. And so I think, do you intend to stay in the home?
At this time, yes.
Yeah. And so, getting that knocked down here, I'm just doing the calculation. Let's say I'm just assuming a lot of things here for the time being. If we gave you a 3.75 interest rate, and of course it would depend on all those particulars that we were talking about.
All
your
seven
new
things.
Payment, all 7 things. Your new payment on that combined balance would be, where is it, David? Where is it? Your principal and interest would only be $407 a month.
Now
So
that would be combining that HELOC?
Yeah, combining those two. And what are you paying now on those two?
It would be about $950 average.
Right.
And I'm just paying the interest. Yeah.
Right. But we're cutting that in half. So I'm going to say if you want to give David a call tomorrow in the office, our general number is 262-781-1100, or if you want to leave your number with our producer, David will give you a call. David, do you have a comment?
No, I think this goes to maybe 2 different themes that we talk about with people. One is going back out to 30 years. You can always pay faster on your loan if you really wanted to, but you can't pay slower. Right. So, and I think, for some folks, going back out to 30 doesn't feel right, but there's nothing that precludes you from continuing to, pay at a faster schedule if you'd like. And then the second piece is we get asked this from time to time, especially by some baby boomers or some recent retirees, is can you give me a 30-year loan?
Yeah, when I'm 62 years old,
exactly.
The answer is yes. I could give a 100-year-old person a 30-year loan because in this great country it's illegal to discriminate based on age. So we're sorry for your loss, Maureen, and is there anything else we can help you with here on the show today, or does that kind of give you the bottom line answer?
You answered exactly what I was looking for.
Excellent. Well, good. Thanks so much for listening to the show. And we'd be happy to help you out tomorrow getting down.
To Maureen's maybe point on her second mortgage, how does that spoil?
Well, it doesn't spoil, but it impacts.
Okay.
So whenever we pay off a first and a second mortgage, if the second mortgage or home equity line was not used to purchase the home, and chances are she got the second mortgage later, then that counts as a cash-out refinance, even though the person's not necessarily walking away with cash. Okay. So that's not going to price up quite as well. Now, it's almost time for another break, but I'm just going to give you one scenario. I have a friend of ours who's looking at refinancing their condominium, and they have 20% equity, but then after we helped them buy it last year, they went and got a home equity line of credit. So they actually, if you look at the first mortgage and the second mortgage together, it adds up to 90% of the value. Okay, or and in this case, it's the maximum they could borrow on the home equity line. It's like $38,000. They only have about $13,000 outstanding. But any time that the total of the new mortgage plus the maximum that you could borrow on the home equity line exceeds 80% of the property value, there's a big penalty. In their particular case, they have the means to pay off and close that home equity line, which means I'll be able to give them a 3.625 rate with no loan costs whatsoever. And this is on a condominium, by the way. We can talk about that in a little bit too. If they insisted on keeping their home equity line, the rate would be 3.875, and they're already at 4.
Oh, wow.
So there'd be no point in doing it.
Yeah.
So that presence of the home equity line of credit causes, in their particular case, a 0.25% increase in the rate. We can talk more about that when we come back, along with your fantastic how we saved a deal at the last minute here at Accunet Mortgage this week when we come back.
It's 10:49, and there's still time. We can squeeze you in. You can get on the show, too. 414-799-1620 or throughout the Midwest on the Accunet Mortgage toll-free talk line, 800-877-1620. You're listening to the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show.
Getting you through the home buying process. Welcome back to the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show with Brian Wickert on 620 WTMJ.
Acting CEO of the Wisconsin State Fair, Kathleen O'Leary, sits down for WTMJ Conversations. The debut program is at 11:07. Right now at 10:53, it is the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show on 620 WTMJ. Brian, David?
So we had a closing this week that almost wasn't a closing this week.
What happened?
On a purchase. So let's go back a week. We are all about good game plans when it comes to purchasing a home. And the nice part is we're not stuck necessarily with whatever the first draft of the game plan might be. So for this particular buyer, they were going to make a 10% down payment from savings, from their American Funds Roth IRA.
Okay, and they didn't have to sell their old home.
Nope, they're retaining the home that they were selling.
Which is really important when you're buying a house, because that's the big spoiler. If you write your offer and say, yeah, me buying your house is contingent upon me selling my old house, that is the kiss of death.
Yep.
So they didn't have to do that.
Correct.
10% down. Then what happens?
Exactly. So we deliver. We say, great, that game plan works great. Here's your loan commitment. We are good to go. And they looped back with us and said, you know what, actually, we're going to be selling our
existing
departing residence earlier that same morning that we're going to buy our new home. So if it's okay, can we just use the proceeds from that sale to make a 20% down payment? And
the answer was sure.
Absolutely.
How far in advance was this, David?
This was 9 days.
9 days. Okay. So we went from a 3.75 rate, as I recall, with no monthly PMI.
Yep.
Folks, you don't have to have 20% down to avoid monthly PMI. And then we were able to lower the rate to 3.625. Correct. Then what happened?
So then I get an emergency phone call from the real estate agent letting me know on Thursday that
the day before closing.
Yep. Oh. The buyer for the
old house
can't close on Friday. They had gotten delivered a loan commitment, but the big bank,
whose name rhymes with Face,
said, sorry, we can't get you the mortgage.
Don't know why exactly.
Don't know why.
All of a sudden now it's like, hey, we need to switch back to 10%, which you'd think would be no problem, except there's this federal regulation that's now in effect for the last 2 years that says if your annual percentage rate changes by more than 1/8 of 1%, which is 0.125%, you have to be given 3 days. There's like a 3-day waiting period.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So we're going from 3.625 to 3.75, which if you pull out your calculator is exactly 0.125%. But through the miracle of math, we were able to make a little adjustment, pay for a little tiny closing cost that counts in that annual percentage rate calculation, and sneak it under the wire so that the change in interest rate was only 0.115.
Within that tolerance.
And we were able to, because we are a flexible, relatively still small, nimble company, redo all the closing documents.
Call our D.C. council to make sure that we were...
Just wanted to make sure that we weren't going to violate a federal regulation and say, are we analyzing this right? Got her on the phone on the first call. Yep. And we were able to pull this off. and get her done. And they closed on Friday with going kind of back to the original plan, but whew, it was a fire drill, folks. We don't like doing that, but we are nimble enough to get that done. I don't think that would ever have happened if you were dealing with really anybody but a company the size of Accunet Mortgage.
Yes.
You know, because it was literally me, David, and our chief of operations, Jason Hansen, holding hands, singing Kumbaya, and saying, "Can we pull this off?" And sure enough, we did, which is awesome.
Yes.
Speaking of interest rates, this week we have the Federal Reserve meeting. They're not going to do anything, but the U.S. economy is getting better and better. We had retail sales come in last week. We didn't get a chance to talk about that. That's 2/3 of the economy and robust. We have inflation is getting back more towards the Fed's target of normal. We had a smoking good jobs report for May, and June. For June, 275,000 new jobs created, which is amazing. So the steamroller, Eric, is starting to roll again.
Okay.
Relative to maybe the Fed will actually raise rates. Now, when they do, if they do yet this year, that will have an immediate impact on something we were just talking about, everybody's home equity line of credit rate. Mm-hmm. Right now, the prime rate is at 3.5, and so a lot of people's home equity lines are at half above prime. Well, as soon as the Fed changes that rate, short-term rates are going to go up. So a good strategy is one that Maureen just demonstrated. Now, her motivation was because her home equity line balance was going to be called due and payable all at once. Mm-hmm. But everybody's home equity line of credit is a variable rate. Why not weld that together with your existing first mortgage and lock it all in at today's low, super low fixed rates while they remain low?
So before I let you go, a happy 17th birthday to Accunet this week. So
Thanks. Yeah,
harking back to 1999. What you must have had, darker, fuller hair.
I had darker hair and less of a bald spot, David. Yes. And you were just a wee little
I was
lad.
10.
You were 10 years
True.
old. Oh, my goodness. Think of that. That's a long time ago. And that's all we got for this week, Eric. I won't see you next week, but we'll be back with Steve Kettler, and I'll be doing the show solo. David's taking a motorcycle lesson.
Don't tell my mother.
Don't tell Mom.
Sounds good. David, Brian, thank you so much. I look forward to the 20th anniversary party. You have 3 years to plan it. 10:59 in News Radio 620 WTMJ. Much more at Accunet.com, or you can call 262-781-1100.
The preceding was a paid program. Advice and opinions expressed during the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show are solely that of the hosts or guests of Accunet Mortgage and Accunet Realty Advisors, and not WTMJ Radio or Scripps Media Incorporated.